To order, roll calls have been taken.
Yes.
It wasn't hard, was it?
No.
Approval of the minutes of the 08/11/16 regular meeting. Motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
Any changes or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I will call, I don't have to do that, call for a vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries, we're done. Helmet shield presentations to Zachary Miller and Anthony Lucchini. Where are you guys? Come on over.
Whoa, that's a first.
What did he say?
I don't do anything until I'm told.
We'll put this back. And you are Anthony yeah, you look like Lucchini. There we go. Congratulations, you get your shield when you start, and you get this when you finish training. Now you're fully qualified, you're gonna fight them fires. I really do appreciate you being part of the team.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for you, the same thing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wish I could offer you guys the food that's over there, but I've been told I can't, so tough luck. Okay. Thank you guys for coming. Approval of police department bills.
I'll wait till the noise leaves. Okay. Good morning. We just have one set of bills in front of you, signed by Commissioner Keough on the 19th of August. Nothing of significance really within those bills. One thing I'd like to bring to your attention is on 5E. There is a Sharps cabinet that was made by Treehouse Wood Creations. Treehouse Wood Creations is actually one of our police sergeants who does some woodwork on the side. And I had asked him to make a Sharps cabinet for our lobby. We have the pharmaceutical drop box there. We've sometimes taken Sharps from individuals, diabetic needles, some EpiPens and such, but we really didn't have a container to hold bulk items of this nature. So what Travis did was made a nice wood Sharps cabinet that can hold a fairly decent quantity of Sharps, and we can dispose of them through St. Joe's or Marshfield Clinic appropriately, but at least now we can collect larger supplies of these Sharps, which we haven't been able to do in the past.
Number one, I really appreciate that. The only place in town to put Sharps is St. Joe's. To have, promote that somehow.
Sure. Yeah, we're putting a sign on there, and then we'll put that out on our social media and get that out a little bit more. But yeah, we felt too that it was a need, and I was very appreciative of Travis to put that together. Be happy to answer any questions, or otherwise I look for your approval on those purchases.
Move to approve the police department bills.
I'll second.
Okay, are there any questions of the chief? If not, we have a roll call vote. Gershman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Keough, yes. Carries. Fire department bills. Chief?
You've got two sets of bills in front of you, one signed by Commissioner Myers and one signed by Commissioner Mueller. Only one item to really bring to your attention, that's on page 6C, $2,400 for testing of all fire department ladders. That's a yearly thing that's mandated. It's always painful to watch them mend my ladders the way they do, but it does maintain the safety for the guys that's there. Just something to bring to your attention that's a yearly thing. I'll be glad to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
Motion to approve fire department bills.
I'll move.
Second? Thank you. Are there questions for the chief? In that case, vote. Again, it's roll call. Gershman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Keough, yes. Motion carries. Police Department, activities, training reports, correspondence packet. Chief again.
Yep, a couple things to bring to your attention. On the 12th of August, we had a Cop on a Rooftop event held at Dunkin' Donuts between Marshfield Police Department and in combination with Wisconsin Rapids Police Department. This was a fundraiser for Special Olympics. I can't remember the exact amount that they said that they had generated. I thought it was close to $700 with, they didn't want us on the roof, so it was actually a cop on a scissors lift. But we thought that that was as close to being on a roof as we could, as they would allow us to be. And we also had an officer that was working in the drive-through, so it was a good event, not only for the community, but one that we were able to do in combination with Wisconsin Rapids Police Department. We had on the 16th of August, our chaplains, we have 5 police chaplains. In the past, we've kind of wavered between 1 and 2 police and fire chaplains, and we had a chaplain swearing in on the 16th at the police department. And it was a nice event attended by their families and friends, and it was just nice to have an official welcoming, I guess, to our 5 new police chaplains. On the 22nd of August, I had given a presentation to Noon Rotary on the current climate of law enforcement, just kind of a local perspective of how what's going on in the nation is affecting us locally, and just more or less an open forum as to feedback as to what we can do better, things that we're currently doing that maybe some of these community members weren't aware of. So it was a good presentation to have. And then on the 23rd of August, we had a meeting with downtown businesses held at Main Street Marshfield. There are some concerns over some summertime burglaries that they've experienced, and did some, with the media there, did some kind of problem solving as to how we can better serve the downtown businesses and tend to their needs. And then on the 24th and 25th of August, there was a tabletop disaster drill held here at the fire department with many representatives from the community, to include St. Joe's, Marshfield Utilities, Department of Public Works, Fire Department, Police Department. I know I'm leaving some out, but it was a room full, and it was a good disaster drill focused on a snowstorm with an ice storm. We not only had to navigate some, impassable roads, but do that in the process of fire department fighting a fire at Parkview Apartments, and there being a roof collapse at down at Hotel Marshfield. So just trying to manage our resources and work together collaboratively from a department head's perspective as to what we need to do to not only save lives, but render first aid to many people that did not have power at the time. So it was a really good 2-day tabletop event that was a great experience. And then the only other things I'll bring to your attention are on 7F as far as correspondence. We had sold a Tahoe through one of our police Tahoes through Wisconsin Surplus, and we're still getting about $10,000 for those vehicles. It was $10,250 that we received, where in the past, when we would sell our Impalas, we were getting anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. So it just the price we've been getting on the back end for those SUVs is what we had thought it would be, which is almost double what we were getting for the Impalas. So be happy to answer any questions on those activities.
One question, somewhat related to the Tahoes.
Sure.
I know we have a Ford Explorer now.
Mhm.
How are the early indications on how that's working as a vehicle?
Overall, it's a little smaller inside, but overall consensus was that they love the fact that it's all-wheel drive. The Tahoes we were purchasing were 2-wheel drive based on affordability. The 4-wheel drives would run about $5,000 more when we're talking the Tahoes. Chevys almost price themselves out of the market because for agencies our size, I mean, they've gone up about $10,000 over the course of the last 5 years. For the governmental side, and that's substantial compared to Ford Explorers or even some of the pickup trucks, the 4-wheel drive pickup trucks that are available to law enforcement that have pretty much stayed status quo as far as the prices, have not seen a whole lot of increase over the last 5 years. But overall, the the handling, the all-wheel drive aspect, the acceleration, you know, just some of those things that you don't need all the time, but you need at certain times, are really noticed in the Explorer compared to the Tahoe. So we have another one on order this year, but we're still going to try to keep one or two vehicles that are a little bit larger interior-wise for some of our vehicles that carry more equipment, or those that have officers that are taller and more built than I am. So they appreciate that interior room, that cargo space, or that interior space too. So we'll probably have a balance of both vehicles, but it's been overall very good feedback so far.
Your tabletop exercise, as Chair of the Board of Commissioners of the CDA, I want you to know that fires are not permitted in Parkview.
You better, yeah, we like your policy though.
Yeah.
But you will be glad to know that we did use that MRAP very judiciously during that process.
Oh,
Yeah, I forgot to
the
mention that.
armored rescue vehicle.
That's exactly what it was used as.
Yeah, we used the armored rescue vehicle to transport patients to the hospital from both Parkview and the hotel, because the roads were impassable and we couldn't get the plows through. We had also, there was some structural issues down at Hotel Marshfield, and they needed a large quantity of lumber brought down there so that they could reinforce some of the structures, so they could pull individuals out of some of the wreckage. And we simulated having the armored rescue vehicle go to Menards, pick up a bunch of lumber, and bring it down to Hotel Marshfield, again through some what would normally be impassable roads at that time based on the snow and ice. So it was, and then it did some routine patrol throughout the city in those areas that some citizens or residents weren't able to necessarily, where they were snowbound, I guess, so to speak.
The other thing that we did that we haven't done in the past is when they were calling around for getting materials or personnel or whatever, they actually made phone calls to those businesses, telling them this is a drill. But if I called asking for this, what would the availability be? And so that was very, very interesting process. It was a learning experience for a lot of people, especially those people that will be involved in that.
What is the progress on the painting of that vehicle?
It should be done either today or tomorrow. The painting should be done. We then have an agreement. We have a place to keep it temporarily until hopefully our permanent place that we're going to be housing it will be available. But in the meantime, we have a place to keep it temporarily that's sheltered.
Have either of you seen it? Bring it to the next meeting, please. Park it in back.
Sure. Or in front.
Yeah. But bring it to the next
Yeah,
meeting.
we definitely will.
Okay. Anything else for Chief Gramza? Crime reports? Anything special in this month's crime reports?
Nothing significant that hasn't been already addressed at previous meetings. Our drug arrests are up about 25% this year. We've had about a 30% increase in thefts, but our vandalism is down by about 50%. You know, some of those areas, you know, could be isolated as far as we could have one or two individuals at any given time committing a lot of these crimes. So the spike last year in vandalism could have been, and I haven't looked into it, but could be attributed to one or two events, one or two little, I guess, crime sprees, so to speak. The thefts, we've noticed a definite increase, but a lot of times the thefts are, the increase in drug arrests or the drug problem is indicative with sometimes the property crimes you have and the thefts that you end up investigating. Sometimes those go hand in hand, so I'm not surprised that our thefts have gone up with our drug arrests going up as well. Otherwise, there's nothing of significance.
Nope. Thank you, Chief. Hiring process sponsorship proposal for the police department. Would you like to walk us through?
Yeah. What we're looking for your permission on is, historically, we have, when it comes to hiring, we've hired what we feel is the best individual who has been through recruit school or who is currently certified by attending a recruit school or an academy. In thinking of how many people we've had applying and how to broaden that, some departments, Green Bay, Waukesha, Sheboygan, Madison, communities like that, they sponsor individuals. This is something we did back in the early and mid-'80s, but what I'm looking for permission on is that we open up our recruitment to any individual who has an interest in being in law enforcement. And if they are the one who we feel is the best individual for the fit for the community and for the department, and they aren't certified yet or they haven't gone through recruit school, that the department or the city would pay for them to go to recruit school. They would be an employee of the police department. We would send them to that 3 or 4 months of recruit school, cover that cost, and then we would have some sort of contract in place to where they would have to remain an employee with us for, say, a minimum of 3 years or a minimum of 5 years. Or they would have to be, or they may have to pay back some of that prorated investment that we put in them as it relates to that recruit school. I personally know 4 individuals who have approached me over the last probably 3 or 4 weeks that have said that they're ready for a career change. They're professionals in either this community or our neighboring community, and they feel that this is a good time to get into the career of law enforcement. Even with the things that are going on throughout the nation, they feel that this is a good time to come into a profession and help foster a change. And but that's not a move that they would make. They wouldn't necessarily quit their current full-time job and put their family in a precarious position just to take a chance at getting a job once they've attended an academy, because there would be no guarantees at that point. But if they are hired and then put through the academy or sponsored through the academy by our agency, that would be more, I guess, appealing to them, because there'd be some certainty, I guess, as it relates to having a job and then being able to spend 4 months at an academy or at a recruit school. So I can't say that the best person for the job isn't going to be somebody who's already put themselves through that academy. And obviously, I mean, we would keep that open to all individuals, but about a year ago, we had broadened our hiring a little bit and offered some lateral transfer or lateral entry for officers who were coming to us that are already employed with an agency, and give them a little pay incentive or a pay boost based on giving them credit for their full-time experience that they're bringing to our agency. That helped a little bit with growing the numbers. The numbers had been shrinking or have been shrinking nationwide. The application numbers have been shrinking nationwide. So I'm just looking at a way to again, get those numbers increased. And I thought offering the potential for somebody to be sponsored or to be put through an academy would be a good way to have that happen.
I really like the concept, expand the pool of available people, and even looking outside a traditional applicant, somebody that's went through school. The only thing I guess I'd want a little more detail on is, what kind of expenses would be involved, and not that you would hire the first person that from outside that was to go into recruit school, but I think part of it, we'd have to have a little bit better examination of how much the costs are going to be.
They would be an employee with the city, so I mean, they would be making an hourly wage while they're at the academy. But then the cost for the academy is, depending on which school you go to, averages between $4,000 and $5,000 for that 4 months of training. So that would be something that we would absorb and pay for, but then would have that, would work with the city attorney to have a contract in place so that if they decided it wasn't for them, or they didn't pass the academy based on the academy's, I guess, opinion, or if then once they came to the police department after the academy, they didn't pass probation, or, there was all those other, if they didn't last necessarily 3 or 5 years or whatever was that deciding number, that they would be subject to paying back a prorated amount of that, but a prorated amount of that $4,000 or $5,000. But Otherwise, it would be no additional expenses above and beyond what normal hiring of an officer is. There would be nothing additional with that.
Well, if you hire someone who's been through the training and put them on the payroll, you have your own training to do before they're actually on the road, right? Okay. The additional cost here would be the time that you're paying them that they're in the academy. Any sense of how much that would come to?
I don't. I mean, it would be 4 months of income or of salary for
Yeah, you
an
pay them
officer.
at what rate?
At starting rate of pay, which would be, I believe, $19 an hour.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There'd be some benefit costs in there too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mike?
Just to be honest with you, I'm a little hesitant, but I'm curious, I guess. If there's no urgency in this, perhaps you could check on exactly what those costs would involve. And I'd also be curious if you could touch base with similar departments our size in Wisconsin to get a feel for if this is gonna be a trend or if they shy away from it for one reason or the other. The reason that we started requiring the education and the certification was so that we wouldn't run into having to pay for the recruit school. Because if they're gonna be involved with that for 4 months and they come back here and then they're in the FTO program, so we we'll lose better than a half a year, 3/4 of a year with very little productivity out of them. And, I guess I don't worry about recouping and stuff like that. That's all something that could be taken care of on paper and commitment on their part. But then I also hesitate for the reason that a lot of the younger people that are going into law enforcement take on the 2-year, at least a 2-year degree, and then they take on the recruit school as well as certification on their own. The one benefit that you pointed out was the fact that, I know what it's like to be 40 years old and have to change careers, and 35 years old, and you could possibly come out with some mature people. And so I guess there's a possibility there. But other than that, if you don't have to do this within the next couple of weeks, I'd like some more information before we move ahead with it.
I know we have, if I could just, we do have a current vacancy at the police department, and we are taking applications for that. I guess if it was a decision made right now, what I would look for is just to take that, certified aspect off of the requirements. The value I see in that, just like you said, Mike, is having somebody with some of that life experience. I was also told by some of the more senior officers that when we got rid of that, because we used to sponsor individuals, and yeah, you'd lose probably at that time, maybe 4 months on that individual, where now we might be losing, upwards of 6 or 7 months of productivity. But yet you're, at the cost of potentially getting the best individual, not necessarily the best certified individual for that position. Not saying that we haven't hired good people all along. I mean, I think we have had very good hires along the way. I also look at the numbers of when I was hired, and we had 130 people apply for 2 positions when I got my job back 19 years ago. This last hiring process that we performed, we had 12 applicants. I mean, so that's, again, I'm just looking for a way to broaden that pool. We only need 1 out of those 12. Maybe the market was flooded back 19 years ago and we had 130 or 150 people putting in for a couple jobs. But looking at it now, we've had some agencies, I talked to Taylor County, and they were talking about doing something similar, because this last time they were hiring, they had 8 applicants. 5 of them washed out on a background, and they're left with 3 to pick from, and none of them really, I guess in their own words, knocked their socks off. So it was just, you know, so there's times where departments are then going back to the drawing board and opening it back up again without hiring anyone off of that list, and that's a lot to go through as well. So I'm just trying to brainstorm for finding ways to get more people in the door, not saying that person will actually be the one that we hire, but it would just open up that pool of applicants. But I'd be happy to get some numbers for you and supply those. But we do have a current vacancy, and I guess if that change could happen sooner than later, you know, with applications that we're willing to take in, I'd like to see that happen.
Well, you run the department, so I mean, if it would be your recommendation, I could certainly go on that, but I do hesitate, because for what I mentioned before, you know, what's it gonna cost us, and, you know, is it the right move? And you know that the numbers probably dwindled from 20 years ago, because at that time, all this stuff wasn't required to even apply. You know, they got the same problem in the county. You know, they went from 100 and some applicants every time they had an opening to, you know, 40 or 50. And it isn't because people aren't interested in getting into law enforcement, it's just that they didn't qualify.
Sure.
And so that doesn't even pay to apply. And so I'm always anxious to try something different, but I mean, we got to this point because
Sure.
originally we said they need the certification so we don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So, and
The chief would like it done now. You would like to hold off for
Well-
some